Welcome to Mamahood After Trauma, where we stop pretending and heal out loud. I'm Emily Cleghorn, trauma survivor, cycle breaker, and mama rebuilding from the inside out. If you're ready to break cycles, trust yourself again, and rise without shame, you're in the right place. Let's go. Before we dive in, I want to introduce you to something brand new. If you love the podcast and want a deeper connection to your healing, check out the monthly Peace Pack, a small trauma-informed tool delivered each month straight to your mailbox to help you find calm in the everyday. You'll also get access to our private Patreon community where mamas like you can share, support, and learn together. Sign up with the link in the show notes. Hello, mama, and welcome to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. I am thrilled that you have taken some time out of your busy mama schedule to tune in and listen to our conversation today. Today, we are joined by Leah Johnson. Welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Emily.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation today. So let's dive in. And if you could introduce yourself a little bit, share a little bit of your story and how you have come to work in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. So my story is rooted in a deep addiction to success. And so I have leaned into understanding that and overcoming that, as well as allowing my intuition, my divinity, my authentic self to come forward through the power of transformation of creativity. So I had a 25-year career in politics, which certainly no doubt fueled my addiction to success. I think early on, I found it as a space that I could constantly seek the external validation and approval that I felt I needed to really lean into my worth and where I thought that love and value of myself came from. And, after many, many years in that space, also facing though, I had general depression, anxiety, chronic PTSD, postpartum depression, all while being a public official and having a baby while I was an elected official and having this need to be this perfect person who had it all together while I was actually falling apart. And, for me, it was that drive to succeed. And then when that didn't, inevitable failures came, I would drink to fill the void. And so it was trauma cycles. It was then ultimately, I found myself in a pretty dark spot. And multiple suicide attempts. And I really realized at that point, if I was successful, my kids were really young at that point. If I was successful in taking my own life, not only was I going to perpetuate cycles of trauma and addiction for my kids, I was going to make it worse. And so I realized something needed to change. And so that's been my journey for the last 7 years, really, is leaning into that power of transformation and creativity and my portal out.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that bit of your story. So when you made that realization that something needed to change, what was your first step in your journey out of that really dark spot that you mentioned?
Yeah. I think the journey out of trauma is a very long one.
Yeah, never ending.
Like I'm still, but at least today I have more tools and I'm healthier and all the things.
Yeah.
for me, it's been a 15-year journey, and
Mm,
it really started, uh, when I went on my very first, spiritual journey,
mhm,
self-care thing, and I think part of that what's important in that is how we forget that taking care of ourselves is actually the most important thing we can possibly do, uh,
absolutely.
and our society doesn't give women permission, and especially mothers, to do that, and so and at that point, I actually wasn't a mother yet, uh, but I knew something. So I went on this first spiritual journey, and it cracked me open. It in fact, I say sometimes it shattered me, and then
Mm,
I've spent the last 15 years putting those pieces back together, as I actually am, not as I was told I should be. Uh, but so that started it, and it really created this parallel track for me. So
mhm,
the dominating narrative of trauma and addiction and generational trauma and all of those things. And
mhm,
then there was this soft narrative underneath
mm,
that started slowly to build. It was a recognition that I could find my worth. I could
yeah,
find self love. I could find a place where I didn't hate myself so much.
mm,
And, it was over time. And I went
yeah,
first journey and it was uh great. And I did great things. And then, you get home and you start to integrate back into life and you don't do it. And I'd go in those early years, months, maybe even a year in that first space and not access it at all. But it was always there.
yeah,
And so I think it was that really laid something different, a different foundation, that a different narrative was possible.
yeah. So, how has your journey informed the work that you do now?
I mean, it's everything, right?
Mm,
Uh, for me, when in politics, I had this overwhelming desire to change the world and make
yeah,
things better, right? And that's why I was drawn to it at such a young age and stuck with it for so long because I believed that's how I could change the world. But what I came to understand is I couldn't help impact the collective trauma if I didn't heal my own trauma first. And
oh,
s
that's powerful.
yeah, and and so it was in my healing my own trauma that then I could empower others to heal theirs. And I live in this recognition that life is hard and there are hard
Mhm,
things, and that's where we're at. But we're designed to go through hard things and heal.
yep,
For me, the hard is inevitable, but the healing is a choice.
absolutely.
And so,
Yeah, the hard is inevitable. There are going to be hard things, there's going to be loss, there's going to be grief. It's in your choice as to, do you confront it? Do you run away from it? Do you avoid it? What what do you choose to do with it? I love how you put that. It's true. It's true.
well, and it's sometimes not the most fun thing to confront.
Oh,
Like,
no. And I think it's almost guaranteed that it's never the most fun
yeah,
thing to confront.
it's easier to mask it and not
Oh, yeah.
it. But I will say, now that I've been through it, I would actually counter that because now that I did confront it and I have, acknowledged the trauma and healed it and rewired my brain and my spirit and my being to something different, life is so much better. So, so it's hard, but for me, the end result has been so worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. For me, the beginning of my journey it was hard and laborsome. And I always had in the back of my mind, it would be so much easier to just go back to what's quote unquote normal, what the norm was. But that's not the life I want. And if I want to create a better life for myself and for my kids, then I've got to forge on. I've got to keep going.
Yeah, and as mothers, it's
Yeah.
that I mean, for me, that was the deep, visceral womb connection changed, right? Like,
Mhm.
suddenly it becomes about something more than just you. And healing
Yeah.
your trauma isn't just about you anymore. It's about your legacy and what you're passing on and what you're sharing and demonstrating for your kids.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, that was what finally made me say, okay, I have to do something different. As my husband looked at me and he was like, is this really how you want to live? Is this how you want your kids to see you? Because I know it's not. So you keep, you keep finding yourself in these dark spaces. And then, for me, it was, I had a suicide attempt that was almost successful. And then a week later, I was sitting at a table with community leaders talking about running for higher office. Like, I just could not get myself out of the belief that this success was what was going to make me happy, to make me better.
Mm,
And then, I would fill those voids with alcohol because one, I felt like a failure. I didn't feel adequate. I constantly was telling myself I wasn't lovable, I wasn't worthy, I wasn't doing enough. And so I would just try and escape that constant narrative that was in my brain.
mm,
And but again, to that parallel narrative that was underneath, that was slowly telling me, no, you're worth more than this. You're worth more than any accomplishment, any external
mm,
validation. You are worthy just because you are. And
mhm,
I started to truly believe that. And it took mantras over and over and over and over and over again to be able to actually embody that belief. But when I started to believe that was when I found the courage to say, I need help and I need to quit all of this. And so, but kids, they are the root of, for me, they've been my inspiration for transformation.
that's beautiful. Yeah, my kids have been my driver when things get really frustrating. You just wanna throw your hands up in the air. And, um, so what how do you help other mamas now or other women now?
Yeah. Um, well, I think first and foremost, it's talking about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
these are such important topics for us to bring to the light and
Mhm.
say, like, sometimes we're not okay, and it's okay to be not okay. And there are tools and resources that can get you out, and normalizing these experiences so there isn't shame and guilt associated with them.
Mhm.
I mean, that's really, for many years, has been where I've leaned into. And then as I w- looked at the tools that I had used uh, to be able to pull myself out of it, what it really came down to was my creativity and
Mhm.
leaning into that. So I have journaled and doodled and colored and written poetry and all of the things since I was a teenager to process my trauma. And I actually did a installation art piece about a year ago that I called the ofrenda to my past selves. And it included I had different journal entries, talking about being a survivor of sexual assault and what those images that I drew, back in my early 20s when I was deeply processing that, or, just the self-hate or the lack of love I felt from my mother, just all of those things.
Mm.
And but I think what was important about that is honoring all of the parts of me and all of the
Mhm.
parts that I have been and that I'm becoming. But that creativity is what allowed me to tap into that transformation. And in the last couple years, I've gotten trained as an intentional creativity teacher. And it's amazing when we become intentional about our actions and
Mhm.
intentional about taking the trauma that's inside of us
Mhm.
and turning it into something different, something
Yeah.
beautiful, something that, using the canvas or a journal to alchemize that pain and allow for a space of rebirth and transformation. And I find, and this is a narrative I lean into a lot when I'm feeling fear, is I know from experience that when I actually get things out of me, the
Yep.
trauma, the beliefs, the limiting beliefs, any of that, when I get it out of me, what it does is it creates space inside of me for new to come.
Mhm.
And that new over and over and over again has been this space of joy and happiness and rebirth,
Mhm.
contentment and connection and all of those things that I longed for so long. So now when I face these things with fear, I lean into that belief because I know it to be true that
Mhm.
when I get things out, when I change things, it allows for that new space and new growth.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and it's so true because when you are able to work through the hard things and allow yourself to process, that creates space for something new to grow. Um, what are 2 tips that you or strategies, 2 little gifts, for our listener to take with her in her journey to help her move along her heal her healing journey?
Yeah. So, two practices that I do very regularly that have helped me in that
Mhm.
small little intentional space is one, just prayer dots. Um, So, you can do it anywhere. Just need a pen and a notebook or a piece of paper, right? And just creating dots or stars or hearts, whatever it is, but with intention. And whether it's the intention of releasing those heavy things and getting them out of
Mhm.
you, or the intention of loving yourself, or the intention of forgiveness, or the
Mhm.
intention of gratitude, but it's a small act that allows you to transfer that energy, to shift it from "It's inside of me" to
Mhm.
"It's something I am alchemizing, it's something I'm creating," recognizing the energy I either want to receive or I want to release. And so
Mhm.
that's one thing that I do a lot, really regularly. And I think, again, it's just that we are all creative beings,
Mm-hmm.
The power of creativity is in us as humans. We have a desire to create things and redefining what creativity looks like. So
Mm-hmm.
often I feel like in our society we create with a goal in mind. Like there has to be an
Yeah.
out, and
Yeah.
giving yourself permission to enter a space where you're creating just to create, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so with that recognition, no matter what you're creating, and even if it's you're cooking or you're playing with your kids, those you're being creative and
Yeah.
honoring that creative process with intention, I think is really important. And then the second practice, and I started this a long time ago, is when those like cringe moments of life come up, and I was in cycles for a long time. I've got plenty of them. Uh, Instead of leaning into shame and guilt, take that, and I visualize it literally coming out of me and holding it in my hand and wrapping it with love and grace. And, there are things that come up over and over and over again, and I
Mm-hmm.
do that practice. But I think self-compassion is something that we don't ever get taught, or how do we love
Absolutely.
ourselves? And so it's a way that I have been able to take those moments and allow me to move through them and say, at that point in my life, I was doing the best I could.
Yep.
I'm human. I am very imperfect. And at the same time, I can give myself grace because I have been through it and I've gotten through
Mm-hmm.
it, and I'm here, and I'm here to do it differently now. So,
Well, thank you so much for sharing those practices. And I think going back to creativity without an outcome, when you are able to sit down and just allow whatever needs to come out through your paintbrush or your pen or whatever it is that you're doing, it it opens it opens up space for growth. And so thank you so much again for sharing your story and for being on the podcast today. Leah, is there any final thoughts you want to leave our listener with?
yeah, something I say often is, I had a 25-year career in politics. I am overtly aware of how the world is.
Mhm.
But what I've come to understand is you can't change the world living in it as you want, as it is. The way we change the world and the way you change your own world is by living in it as you want it to be. And so for me, I show up with joy and I show up with that intention to dream whatever it is I want into reality, because we truly have the power to create our own realities. And it comes by showing up as you want it to be, not as it actually is. And, that's not spiritual bypassing. That's not honoring the hard. I get it. But also, I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be happy and joyful and great. And it can when you lean into that.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Emily.
Thanks for listening to Mamahood After Trauma. Take one insight from today, breathe, reflect, and keep healing out loud. Subscribe to the podcast for more stories, tools, and support. And remember, Mama, you're breaking cycles and rising with honesty. Until next time, mend the past so you can mama in peace.